Sarah Martinez looked at her watch and sighed. It was already 9 o'clock at night. She had been working for 12 hours straight, and her feet hurt so bad she could barely stand. But she could not go home yet. Tonight was different. Tonight, she was working at a special party for rich people. Sarah was 24 years old. She worked as a waitress at Romano's, one of the most expensive restaurants in Los Angeles. The restaurant was fancy with white tablecloths and crystal glasses. Rich people came here to eat and spend lots of money. Sarah had worked there for 3 years now, ever since her life changed forever. 3 years ago, Sarah had a different life. She was studying music at a famous school called Juilliard in New York. She played the piano. She was very good at it too. Her teachers said she had special talent. They said she could become a famous pianist one day. Sarah dreamed of playing in big concert halls and making beautiful music for people around the world. But then something terrible happened. Her parents died in a car accident. Sarah's world fell apart. She had to leave school and come back to Los Angeles to take care of her younger brother, Miguel. Miguel was only 16 then. He had no one else in the world except Sarah. When Sarah came back to Los Angeles, she found out that Miguel was very sick. The doctors said he had a disease in his blood. It was serious. Miguel needed special medicine and treatments to get better. These treatments cost a lot of money, more money than Sarah had ever seen in her life. So Sarah put away her dreams of being a pianist. She sold her piano to pay for Miguel's first treatment. Then she got a job as a waitress. She worked day and night to make money for Miguel's medicine. She never touched a piano again. It hurt too much to think about the music she had lost. Tonight, Sarah was not working at Romano's restaurant. Instead, she was working at a private party. The party was at the house of a very rich man named Marcus Chen. Marcus Chen was so rich that people called him a billionaire. He made his money from computer companies. He lived in a huge house in Beverly Hills where all the movie stars lived. The party was for Marcus Chen's business friends. These were people who owned big companies and had lots of money. Sarah and 5 other waiters from Romano's were hired to serve food and drinks at the party. The restaurant owner, Mr. Romano, told them this was very important. He said they had to be perfect tonight. If they did a good job, maybe Marcus Chen would hire the restaurant for more parties. Sarah put on her black dress and white apron. This was her uniform for fancy parties. She tied her long black hair back and put on her most comfortable shoes. She knew she would be walking around all night carrying heavy trays. When Sarah arrived at Marcus Chen's house, her mouth opened wide. The house was like a palace. It was bigger than 10 normal houses put together. There were tall white columns at the front. Beautiful gardens surrounded the house with flowers of every color. Expensive cars were parked everywhere. Inside the house, Sarah felt like she was in a museum. The floors were made of shiny marble. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. Paintings in gold frames covered the walls. Everything looked like it cost more money than Sarah would make in her whole life. But what caught Sarah's attention most was the piano. In the corner of the main room sat the most beautiful piano she had ever seen. It was a Steinway grand piano, black and shining like a jewel. The lid was open, showing the strings inside. Sarah knew this piano probably cost more than most people's houses. Sarah stared at the piano for a long moment. Her fingers began to tingle. She remembered how it felt to touch piano keys, to make music flow from her fingertips. For just a second, she forgot where she was. She forgot about the party, and the rich people, and her job. She only saw the piano. "Hey, you!" a sharp voice called out. Sarah jumped and turned around. The head waiter, a stern man named Frank, was glaring at her. "Stop staring and get to work. These people don't pay us to look at their stuff." Sarah's face turned red. "Sorry," she whispered. She picked up a tray of champagne glasses and started walking around the room. The party was full of people in expensive clothes. The women wore dresses that sparkled with jewels. The men wore suits that looked like they were made just for them. They talked loudly about money and business deals. They laughed at jokes that Sarah did not understand. As Sarah walked around, serving drinks, she noticed how these people treated her. They did not look at her face when she offered them champagne. They took the glasses without saying thank you. Some of them talked about her like she was not even there. The help is so young these days, one old woman said to her friend as Sarah walked past. At least they're quiet, the friend replied. I hate it when the servers try to talk to us. Sarah kept her face blank, but inside she felt hurt. She was not just the help. She had a college degree. She spoke 3 languages. She could play piano better than most professional musicians. But these people saw her as nothing more than someone to bring them drinks. The worst part was watching Marcus Chen himself. He was a short man with gray hair and cold eyes. He walked around the party like he owned the world. Maybe he did own part of it, Sarah thought. He bragged loudly about his new business deals and how much money he had made. He treated his guests like they were very important, but he completely ignored the waiters. Sarah watched Marcus Chen laugh with his friends near the piano. She wondered if he even knew how to play it. Probably not. For him, it was just another expensive thing to show off. It made Sarah's heart ache to see such a beautiful instrument being ignored. As the night went on, Sarah's feet hurt more and more. She had been carrying heavy trays for hours. Her back ached from bending over to serve people, but she could not complain. She needed this job. Miguel's next treatment was coming up soon, and she still needed more money to pay for it. Sarah thought about Miguel waiting for her at home. He was 19 now, and much stronger than he used to be. The treatments were working, but they had to continue. The doctors said if Miguel kept taking the medicine, he could live a normal life. But if they stopped the treatments, the disease would come back. Sarah would do anything to keep her brother healthy and alive. During a quiet moment, Sarah found herself looking at the piano again. She remembered the last song she had played before she sold her own piano. It was a piece by Chopin, sad and beautiful. She had played it thinking about her parents. Now, standing in this room full of strangers, she felt that same sadness. But Sarah pushed the feeling away. She had work to do. She picked up another tray and continued serving the rich people their drinks and food. She did not know that in just a few hours, everything in her life would change. She did not know that the piano sitting quietly in the corner would soon change her destiny forever. The party had been going on for 3 hours when the accident happened. Sarah was carrying a tray of red wine to a group of businessmen near the window. She walked carefully, making sure not to spill anything. The tray was heavy, and her arms were getting tired. Just as Sarah reached the group, one of the men stepped backward without looking. He was a big man with a loud voice who had been drinking too much. He bumped right into Sarah, hard. The tray shook in her hands. Sarah tried to keep the tray steady, but it was too late. One glass of red wine tipped over and splashed onto the white shirt of the man standing next to them. The wine spread across the expensive fabric like blood. The man with the stained shirt was Marcus Chen. Marcus Chen looked down at his shirt, and his face turned dark red with anger. The wine had splashed all over the front of his shirt. It was ruined. Sarah could see that the shirt was probably very expensive, maybe more expensive than she made in a month. "What have you done?" Marcus Chen shouted. His voice was so loud that everyone in the room stopped talking and turned to look. The party suddenly became very quiet. Sarah's heart started beating fast. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said quickly. "It was an accident. The gentleman bumped into me and I don't want to hear excuses." Marcus Chen cut her off. His eyes were filled with rage. "This shirt cost $3,000. $3,000. Do you have any idea how much money that is?" Sarah felt her face get hot with shame. $3,000 was more than she made in 2 months of working. Everyone at the party was staring at her now. She wanted to disappear. The man who had bumped into her, the one who had actually caused the accident, said nothing. He just stepped away and pretended to look at something else. He did not want to get in trouble with Marcus Chen. "I'm really sorry," Sarah said again. Her voice was shaking. "I can pay to have it cleaned, or..." "Pay to have it cleaned?" Marcus Chen laughed, but it was not a nice laugh. "This shirt is ruined forever. You can't clean red wine out of white silk. It's completely destroyed." Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she tried not to cry. She could not afford to lose this job. She needed the money too badly. Marcus Chen walked closer to Sarah. He was much shorter than her, but somehow he seemed very big and scary. "Do you know who I am?" he asked in a quiet, dangerous voice. "Yes, sir," Sarah whispered. "You're Mr. Chen." "That's right. I'm Marcus Chen. I'm worth $2 billion. $2 billion. I could buy this whole restaurant and fire everyone who works there, including you." The room was so quiet that Sarah could hear her own heartbeat. All the rich people were watching like this was entertainment for them. Some of them were smiling, enjoying the show. "I should fire you right now," Marcus Chen continued. "I should call your boss and tell him that you ruined my shirt and embarrassed me in front of my guests." Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. If she lost this job, she would not be able to pay for Miguel's treatment. Her brother needed the medicine to stay alive. "Please, sir," she said. "I'll do anything to make this right. Please don't fire me." Marcus Chen looked at her for a long moment. Then a mean smile appeared on his face. "Anything?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Anything." "Good. Then you're going to entertain my guests. You're going to earn your paycheck for once instead of just walking around dropping things." Sarah did not understand what he meant. "I don't know what you want me to do, sir." Marcus Chen looked around the room at all his friends. They were watching and waiting to see what would happen next. He was enjoying being the center of attention. "Well," Marcus Chen said loudly, "since you've already ruined my evening, you might as well make yourself useful. You're going to perform for us." "Perform?" Sarah asked. She was confused and scared. "That's right. Sing us a song. Dance for us. Do something to make up for what you've done." Marcus Chen pointed across the room. "Or better yet, play the piano. You look like you might know how to play piano. Am I right?" Sarah's heart stopped. She stared at the beautiful black piano in the corner. She had not touched a piano in 3 years. Not since she sold her own piano to pay for Miguel's first treatment. I can play a little," Sarah said quietly. "Perfect." Marcus Chen clapped his hands together. "Ladies and gentlemen, our clumsy waitress is going to play piano for us. This should be interesting." The guests started talking and laughing among themselves. Sarah heard some of their comments. "This is going to be painful to listen to. I bet she doesn't even know how to read music. Marcus is so cruel, but it's hilarious. Maybe she'll spill something on the piano too." Sarah felt her whole body shaking. She looked around the room at all the faces staring at her. These people thought she was stupid. They thought she was just a poor waitress who knew nothing about music. They were expecting her to fail and they were going to enjoy watching it happen. But what choice did she have? If she refused, Marcus Chen would fire her. If she got fired, Miguel would not get his medicine. Her brother could die. "Well?" "Marcus," Chen said impatiently, "we're waiting. Go play us something, anything. I'm sure it will be very educational." More laughter came from the crowd. Sarah felt like she was going to be sick. This was the most embarrassing moment of her life. She was being treated like a performing animal at a circus. Sarah looked at the piano again. It was so beautiful, so perfect. She remembered how much she used to love playing. She remembered the feeling of her fingers on the keys, making beautiful music. But that was a long time ago. That was before her life fell apart. "I'm waiting," Marcus Chen said. His voice was getting impatient and angry again. Sarah took a deep breath. She had to do this. For Miguel. For her brother who was waiting at home, counting on her to pay for his medicine. She would do anything to keep him alive and healthy. "Okay," Sarah said quietly. "I'll play something." "Excellent," Marcus Chen said. "Everyone gather around. Let's see what our little waitress can do." The guests moved closer to the piano area. They were holding their wine glasses and smiling like they were about to watch a comedy show. Sarah felt their eyes on her like hot lights. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely walk. Sarah walked slowly across the marble floor toward the piano. Each step felt like it took forever. The piano got bigger and bigger as she got closer to it. She could see her reflection in its shiny black surface. When she reached the piano bench, Sarah stopped. She stared down at the keys. They were so white and clean, like snow that no one had ever touched. She remembered her old piano, which had been brown and scratched from years of playing, but the keys had felt the same under her fingers. "Sit down," Marcus Chen ordered. "We don't have all night." Sarah sat down on the piano bench. She adjusted the seat to the right height, just like her piano teacher had taught her years ago. Her hands were still shaking as she placed them over the keys. The room behind her was quiet now, but she could feel everyone watching her, waiting for her to embarrass herself, waiting for her to prove that she was just a stupid waitress who did not belong in their world. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about Miguel at home, probably watching television and waiting for her to come back. She thought about the medicine he needed, the treatments that kept him alive. She thought about her parents, who had always believed in her music. Then, Sarah opened her eyes and looked at the piano keys. Her fingers stopped shaking. Deep inside her, something was waking up, something that had been sleeping for 3 years. It was time to play. Sarah sat at the piano bench with her hands hovering over the keys. Her heart was beating so fast it felt like it might jump out of her chest. Behind her, she could hear the rich people talking quietly among themselves. They were making bets about how badly she would play. "I give her 10 seconds before she gives up," someone whispered. "She probably doesn't even know where middle C is," another person said with a laugh. Sarah tried to block out their voices. She stared at the black and white keys in front of her. They looked exactly like the keys on her old piano, the ones she had sold 3 years ago. She remembered sitting at that piano as a little girl learning her first simple songs. Her mother would sit beside her, helping her find the right notes. "We're waiting," Marcus Chen said from behind her. His voice was impatient and mean. "Play something, anything, even Happy Birthday would be fine." More laughter came from the crowd. Sarah felt her face get hot with embarrassment. These people thought she was a joke. They thought she was going to make a fool of herself. But as Sarah sat there, something strange began to happen. The noise behind her started to fade away. The laughing and whispering became quieter and quieter until she could barely hear it. All she could see were the piano keys. All she could think about was music. Sarah's fingers slowly came down and touched the keys. They felt cool and smooth under her fingertips. For a moment, she just rested her hands there, remembering. Then very softly, she pressed down on one key. The note rang out clear and pure in the big room. It was a beautiful sound. Sarah had forgotten how good it felt to make music. She pressed another key, then another. The notes floated through the air like birds. Behind her, the talking and laughing began to stop. People were starting to pay attention. Sarah took a deep breath and decided what to play. She would start with something simple and beautiful, something that had always been special to her. She would play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It was one of the first difficult pieces she had learned at music school. Sarah placed her hands in the correct position on the keys. Then she began to play. The first notes were soft and gentle, like a lullaby. Sarah's right hand played the melody, while her left hand played the harmony underneath. The music was sad, but beautiful, like watching the sun set over the ocean. As soon as Sarah started playing, something magical happened. Her hands remembered exactly what to do. Her fingers moved across the keys like they had never stopped playing. 3 years of not touching a piano disappeared in an instant. The music flowed from her hands like water from a spring. Sarah forgot about everything else. She forgot about the rich people watching her. She forgot about Marcus Chen and his ruined shirt. She forgot about her embarrassment and fear. There was only the music, and it was perfect. The room behind her became completely quiet. No one was laughing anymore. No one was whispering or making jokes. Everyone was listening to the beautiful music that Sarah was making. Sarah's fingers danced across the keys. The melody rose and fell like waves on a beach. Sometimes the music was soft and gentle. Sometimes it was stronger and more powerful. But it was always beautiful. As she played, Sarah began to remember why she had loved music so much. This was what she had been born to do. This was her gift, her special talent. Playing piano was not just something she could do, it was who she was. The Chopin piece was about 4 minutes long, but to Sarah it felt like both seconds and hours at the same time. Her hands moved perfectly, hitting every note exactly right. She had not made a single mistake, even though she had not played piano in 3 years. As the piece got near the end, the melody became softer and softer. Sarah's touch on the keys was so gentle that the notes seemed to float in the air like whispers. Finally, she played the last chord and lifted her hands from the keys. The room was completely silent. Sarah sat at the piano bench, breathing hard. She could not believe what had just happened. She had played a difficult piece of classical music perfectly, in front of all these people who had expected her to fail. Slowly, Sarah turned around on the bench to look at the crowd behind her. What she saw shocked her. Every single person in the room was staring at her with their mouths open. Their faces showed complete surprise and amazement. These people who had been laughing at her just a few minutes ago were now looking at her like they had never seen her before. Marcus Chen's face was the most shocked of all. His mouth was hanging open and his eyes were wide. The angry red color had drained from his face. He looked like he could not believe what he had just heard. For a long moment, nobody said anything. The silence stretched on and on. Sarah could hear the clock ticking on the wall and the sound of cars driving by outside. Then very quietly someone began to clap. It was a woman near the back of the room. She was clapping slowly and softly, but with great respect. Another person joined in, then another. Soon, more and more people were clapping. The applause grew louder and stronger until the whole room was filled with the sound. But this was not the same crowd that had been laughing at Sarah before. These people were not clapping to make fun of her. They were clapping because they had heard something beautiful and amazing. They were clapping because they had just witnessed real talent. Sarah stood up from the piano bench. She felt dizzy and confused. This was not what she had expected to happen. She had thought she would embarrass herself and make everyone laugh even harder. Instead, she had played better than she ever remembered playing before. I should get back to work, Sarah said quietly. She started to walk away from the piano, back toward the kitchen where she was supposed to be serving drinks. But Marcus Chen stepped in front of her, blocking her path. He was looking at her with a very different expression than before. The anger was gone from his face. Now he looked confused and maybe even a little ashamed. "Wait," Marcus Chen said. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Sarah did not want to answer. She just wanted to go back to her job and pretend this had never happened. But Marcus Chen was her boss for tonight, so she had to answer him. "I studied music in college," Sarah said quietly. "At Juilliard." A murmur went through the crowd. Juilliard was one of the most famous music schools in the world. Only the most talented musicians could study there. "Juilliard," Marcus Chen repeated. He looked even more confused. "Then what are you doing working as a waitress?" Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes again. She did not want to explain her whole sad story to these strangers. She did not want their pity. "I needed a job," Sarah said simply. She tried to walk past Marcus Chen, but he grabbed her arm gently. "Wait," he said again. "Play something else." Sarah shook her head. "I need to get back to work. The other waiters need help." "No," Marcus Chen said. "Forget about the work. Play another song, please." Sarah looked around the room at all the faces, staring at her. These people who had been so mean to her before now looked interested and respectful. But Sarah felt overwhelmed and embarrassed. She had already shown them more of herself than she wanted to. "I really should go," Sarah said. But then she heard a voice from the crowd. It was a woman's voice speaking with a slight accent. "Please," the woman said. "That was the most beautiful playing I have heard in years. Would you play just one more piece?" Sarah looked toward the voice and saw an elegant older woman with silver hair. The woman was looking at Sarah with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Sarah did not know that this woman was Elena Vasquez, one of the most famous classical pianists in the world. Elena had been listening very carefully to Sarah's playing. She had recognized something special, something rare. Sarah hesitated. Part of her wanted to run away and hide, but another part of her, the part that had been sleeping for 3 years, wanted to keep playing. It felt so good to make music again. One more song, Sarah said quietly. She walked back to the piano and sat down again. This time, she was going to play something different, something that came from her heart. Sarah sat down at the piano bench for the second time that evening, but now everything felt different. The room was completely quiet, not because people were waiting to laugh at her, but because they wanted to hear more beautiful music. Sarah looked at the keys and tried to decide what to play next. The Chopin piece had been technical and perfect, showing off her skill, but now she wanted to play something that meant more to her, something personal. As she sat there thinking, Sarah remembered a piece of music she had written herself when she was in college. It was called Memories of Home. She had written it during her second year at Juilliard, when she was feeling homesick and missing her family. The piece was about all the things she loved about growing up in Los Angeles. The warm sunshine, the smell of her mother's cooking, the sound of her father's laugh. It was about family dinners and birthday parties and quiet evenings at home. It was about love and safety and belonging somewhere. Sarah had never played this piece for anyone except her parents and Miguel. It was too personal, too close to her heart. But tonight, sitting in this room full of strangers, she felt like she needed to share it. Sarah placed her hands on the keys and began to play Memories of Home. The music started very softly, like the first light of morning. The melody was simple but beautiful, like a song a mother might sing to her baby. Sarah's left hand played gentle chords while her right hand picked out the sweet tune. As Sarah played, she began to think about her parents. She remembered how proud they had been when she got into Juilliard. Her mother had cried happy tears, and her father had picked her up and spun her around the living room. They had saved money for years to help pay for her music lessons, even when times were hard. The music grew a little stronger as Sarah remembered these happy times. The melody became more complex, with little decorations and flourishes that made it sparkle like jewelry in the sunlight. But then the music began to change. It became sadder and more serious. This part of the piece was about loss and grief. Sarah had written it after her parents died, when she felt like her whole world had fallen apart. As Sarah played this section, tears began to run down her cheeks. She could not help it. The music brought back all the pain she had felt 3 years ago. The shock of getting the phone call about the accident, the funeral with all the flowers and sad faces, the terrible feeling of being alone in the world with only Miguel to take care of. But Sarah kept playing, even with tears on her face. Her fingers never missed a note, never stumbled or hesitated. Years of training had made her hands so skilled that they could play perfectly even when her heart was breaking. The people in the room watched Sarah cry as she played, and many of them began to cry too. They could hear the sadness in the music, but they could also hear something else. They could hear love and strength and hope. The sad part of the music slowly began to change into something else. It became about survival and growing stronger. It was about finding reasons to keep going even when everything seemed hopeless. This was the part Sarah had written about Miguel, about her determination to take care of him no matter what. Sarah's playing became more powerful now. Her hands moved across the keys with confidence and strength. The melody rose higher and higher, like a bird flying toward the sun. As Sarah played, she forgot completely about where she was. She forgot about the rich people watching her, about Marcus Chen and his stained shirt, about being a waitress at a fancy party. She was lost in her own music, in her own memories and feelings. The room was absolutely silent except for the piano. No one moved or coughed or whispered. Everyone was completely focused on the music that Sarah was creating. Some of the people in the room had been to many concerts by famous musicians. They had heard world-class pianists play in the best concert halls, but they had never heard anything quite like this. Sarah was not just playing notes on a piano. She was telling a story with music. She was sharing her heart and soul with everyone in the room. Marcus Chen stood near the wall, watching Sarah play. His face had completely changed from earlier in the evening. The anger and arrogance were gone. Instead, he looked shocked and maybe even ashamed. He was beginning to realize that he had badly misjudged this young woman. Near the back of the room, Elena Vasquez was watching Sarah very carefully. Elena was one of the most famous classical pianists in the world. She had played with the best orchestras and in the most famous concert halls. She knew talent when she heard it. And what Elena was hearing from Sarah was more than just talent. It was genius, raw, untrained genius that had been polished by years of hard work and then refined by real suffering. Elena had not heard playing like this in many years. Other people in the room were also recognizing that they were hearing something special. There was a music producer named David Kim who had discovered several famous artists. He was recording Sarah's performance on his phone, knowing that he was witnessing something rare and beautiful. There was also a music critic from the Los Angeles Times named Jennifer Walsh. She had reviewed hundreds of concerts and could usually predict what a performer would do next. But Sarah's playing surprised her at every turn. It was unpredictable and original and completely captivating. As Sarah's piece moved toward its ending, the music became hopeful and bright. This was the EOA part she had written about the future, about believing that good things could still happen even after terrible losses. The melody soared and danced, full of joy and possibility. Sarah played the final notes with a gentle touch, letting them ring out in the quiet room. Then she lifted her hands from the keys and sat very still. For a moment, no one made any sound. The silence was so complete that Sarah could hear her own breathing. Then the applause began. But this was not ordinary applause. People were not just clapping politely because the music was over. They were clapping because they had been moved and inspired. Some people were crying. Others were shaking their heads in amazement. The applause grew louder and louder. People began to stand up, giving Sarah a standing ovation. Marcus Chen was clapping harder than anyone, looking like he could not believe what he had just heard. Sarah turned around on the piano bench and saw all these people standing and clapping for her. She felt overwhelmed and confused. She had expected to embarrass herself tonight. Instead, she had just given the performance of her life. But even as people applauded, Sarah felt scared. She had shown these strangers the most private parts of her heart. She had let them see her pain and her hopes and her dreams. She felt exposed and vulnerable. Sarah stood up from the piano bench and tried to walk toward the kitchen. She wanted to go back to being invisible, to being just a waitress again. But the people in the room were not going to let her disappear. They gathered around her, trying to talk to her, asking her questions about her music and her background. Sarah felt trapped and overwhelmed. This was not what she had wanted. She had just wanted to do her job and go home to Miguel. But her life had just changed forever, whether she wanted it to or not. Sarah stood beside the piano, feeling dizzy and confused as people crowded around her. Everyone was talking at once, asking her questions and trying to shake her hand. She felt like she could not breathe. That was incredible. Where have you been hiding such talent? You should be on stage, not serving drinks. How long have you been composing music? The voices mixed together into a loud buzz that hurt Sarah's ears. She looked around for a way to escape, but there were too many people. She was trapped. Sarah's hands were shaking again, but not from nervousness this time. She was overwhelmed by all the attention. For 3 years she had been invisible. She had worked quietly as a waitress, never drawing attention to herself. Now suddenly everyone wanted to talk to her, and she did not know how to handle it. "Please," Sarah said quietly. "I need to get back to work." But nobody listened to her. The crowd kept pressing closer, everyone trying to talk to her at the same time. Marcus Chen pushed through the crowd until he was standing right in front of Sarah. His face looked very different now. Earlier he had been angry and mean. Now he looked confused and maybe even sorry. "I had no idea," Marcus Chen said to Sarah. "I'm sorry about what happened with the shirt. I didn't know you were I mean, I didn't realize you were so talented. Sarah looked at him but did not say anything. She was still angry about how he had treated her even though she knew she should probably forgive him. Look, Marcus Chen continued. Forget about working tonight. You don't need to serve drinks anymore. I'll pay you anyway. Just, could you play some more music for us? Sarah shook her head. I really need to go home. My brother is waiting for me. Your brother? Marcus Chen looked surprised. You have family responsibilities. Before Sarah could answer, someone else pushed through the crowd. It was the elegant older woman with silver hair, the one who had asked Sarah to play a second song. She was smaller than the other people, but somehow she made them all step back and give her room. Excuse me, the woman said to the crowd. Her voice was quiet but very commanding. I think this young lady needs some space to breathe. The woman took Sarah gently by the arm and led her away from the crowd, toward a quiet corner of the room. Sarah was grateful to get away from all the noise and questions. Thank you, Sarah said when they were alone. You're welcome, the woman replied with a kind smile. I'm Elena Vasquez. Sarah's eyes went wide. Elena Vasquez was one of the most famous classical pianists in the world. Sarah had listened to her recordings when she was a student at Juilliard. Elena had won every major music award and had played with the best orchestras in every major city. I know who you are, Sarah said, feeling even more nervous. I've heard your recordings, you're amazing. Elena smiled. Thank you. But tonight, you are the one who was amazing. I have not heard playing like that in many years. Sarah felt her face get hot. I'm not that good. I haven't played in 3 years. I'm out of practice. Out of practice? Elena laughed. My dear, if that was you out of practice, I would love to hear you when you are in practice. You have extraordinary talent. Sarah looked down at her feet. She was not used to compliments like this. Thank you, but I'm just a waitress now. I don't play piano anymore. Why not? Elena asked. What happened? Sarah hesitated. She did not really want to tell her whole sad story to this famous woman. But there was something about Elena's kind eyes that made Sarah feel safe. My parents died 3 years ago, Sarah said quietly. I had to leave music school to take care of my younger brother. He was very sick and the treatments cost a lot of money. I had to get a job. Elena's face became very serious and sad. I'm so sorry for your loss. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was, Sarah said. But Miguel needed me. He's my only family now. I had to make sure he got better. And, is he better now? He's much better, but he still needs treatments. The medicine is very expensive. That's why I work 2 jobs. I work at the restaurant during the day, and sometimes I work at parties like this at night. Elena nodded thoughtfully. What was your brother sick with, if you don't mind me asking? Leukemia, Sarah said. It's a blood cancer. But the doctors say if he keeps taking the medicine, he should be okay. And you gave up your music career to pay for his treatments? Sarah shrugged. It wasn't really a choice. Family is more important than anything else. Elena was quiet for a moment, looking at Sarah with great respect. You are a remarkable young woman, she said finally. Not many people would sacrifice their dreams like that for someone else. Miguel would do the same for me, Sarah said simply. I'm sure he would. But Sarah, may I ask you something? Yes. Do you miss it? Do you miss playing music? Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes. Every day, she whispered. Every single day. But I sold my piano to pay for Miguel's first treatment. I haven't been able to afford another one. And tonight? How did it feel to play tonight? Sarah smiled for the first time all evening. It felt like coming home. Like finding a part of myself that I thought was lost forever. Elena nodded. I could hear that in your playing. You have not just technical skill, Sarah. You have something much rarer. You have the ability to make people feel things with your music. That is a gift that very few people have. Thank you, Sarah said. That means a lot, coming from you. Sarah, I want to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Okay. What if I told you that there might be a way for you to have both? A way to take care of your brother and also pursue your music? Sarah looked at Elena with confusion. I don't understand. How could that be possible? I run a foundation, Elena explained. It's called the Vasquez Foundation for Young Musicians. We help talented young people who have faced difficult circumstances. We provide scholarships, financial support, and mentorship. Sarah's heart began to beat faster. What kind of help? Full scholarships to complete music degrees, living expenses while you study, and in special cases, we can also help with medical expenses for family members. Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. You mean, you would help pay for Miguel's treatments? If you were accepted into our program, yes. We would make sure your brother gets the medical care he needs while you complete your musical education. Sarah felt like she might faint. This was too good to be true. But why would you want to help me? You don't even know me. Elena smiled. Sarah, I have been playing piano for 40 years. I have heard thousands of musicians. Most of them are technically skilled but emotionally empty. Tonight, you played with more heart and soul than I have heard in years. You have real genius, and genius should not be wasted. Sarah started crying. She could not help it. For 3 years, she had thought her musical dreams were dead forever. She had accepted that she would spend her life working as a waitress, never touching a piano again except in her dreams. I can't believe this is happening, Sarah said through her tears. Believe it, Elena said gently. But there is one condition. Sarah's heart sank. What condition? You have to want it. You have to be willing to work harder than you have ever worked in your life. Musical training is not easy, especially when you are older and have been away from it. You would have to practice hours every day. You would have to perform for judges and critics who might not be kind. You would have to be willing to fail sometimes and then get up and try again. Sarah wiped her tears and looked Elena straight in the eyes. I would do anything to have my music back. Anything. Elena smiled. Then we have a lot to discuss. But first I think some other people would like to meet you. Elena led Sarah back toward the crowd, where several people were waiting to talk to her. One of them was a man with a business card who said he worked for a record company. Another was a woman who wrote reviews for a major newspaper. But as Sarah talked to these people, she kept thinking about what Elena had said. Could it really be possible? Could she really have her music back and still take care of Miguel? For the first time in 3 years, Sarah allowed herself to hope. Sarah found herself surrounded by people who wanted to talk to her. After years of being invisible as a waitress, the sudden attention felt overwhelming and strange. A man in an expensive suit pushed a business card into her hand. I'm David Kim, from Harmony Records, he said excitedly. We need to talk. That original composition you played, we could make it into a hit single. Have you written other songs? Before Sarah could answer, a woman with short red hair interrupted. I'm Jennifer Walsh from the Los Angeles Times, she said. I write music reviews. I've never heard anything like what you just played. Would you be willing to do an interview? More people crowded around, all talking at once. Sarah felt her head spinning. She looked around for Elena, but the older woman had stepped back to give Sarah space to meet these other people. I don't know, Sarah said, clutching the business cards people kept giving her. This is all very sudden. Sudden? David Kim laughed. Honey, talent like yours doesn't stay hidden forever. You're going to be famous. The word famous scared Sarah. She had never wanted to be famous. She had just wanted to play music because she loved it. Marcus Chen appeared beside her again. He looked very uncomfortable, like he wanted to say something but did not know how. Sarah, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. A big one. I was completely wrong about you and I treated you terribly. Sarah looked at him. His face was red with embarrassment and he could not seem to look her in the eyes. I thought you were just a clumsy waitress, Marcus continued. I had no idea you were so talented. I'm really sorry for the way I acted. Sarah nodded but did not say she forgave him. She was not ready for that yet. The way he had humiliated her in front of everyone still hurt. Look, Marcus said, I want to make this right. I'll pay for the cleaning of any uniforms that got stained tonight. And I'll pay you double what we agreed for the evening. No, triple. That's not necessary, Sarah said quietly. Yes, it is. And if you ever need anything at all, you call me. Marcus pulled out his own business card and pressed it into Sarah's hand. I mean it. I have connections all over the music industry. I can help you. Sarah took the card but did not say anything. She was having trouble processing everything that was happening. The crowd around Sarah kept growing. It seemed like every person at the party wanted to meet her and talk to her. They asked her questions about her music, her background, her plans. Sarah answered as best she could, but she felt confused and tired. After about 30 minutes of talking to people, Sarah began to feel like she could not breathe. The room suddenly felt very hot and crowded. She needed to get outside and get some fresh air. Excuse me, Sarah said to the group of people around her. I need to step outside for a moment. Sarah pushed through the crowd and walked quickly toward the back door that led to the garden. Some people tried to follow her, but she walked fast and managed to get outside alone. The night air felt cool and good on her face. Sarah walked to a quiet corner of the garden where she could not be seen from the house. There was a small bench under a tree, and she sat down heavily. Sarah's hands were still shaking. She looked down at all the business cards people had given her. There were at least 10 of them. Record producers, music journalists, talent agents, classical music promoters. All these important people wanted to work with her. But Sarah felt overwhelmed and scared. 3 hours ago, she had been a nobody. Now all these people were telling her she could be famous, that she could have a music career. It was too much to handle all at once. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to think about Miguel. He was at home right now, probably watching television or doing homework. He had no idea that his sister's life had just changed completely. What would she tell him when she got home? After a few minutes, Sarah heard footsteps on the garden path. She looked up and saw Elena Vasquez walking toward her. I thought you might need some quiet time, Elena said gently. She sat down on the bench next to Sarah. I'm sorry, Sarah said. I just felt overwhelmed in there. I'm not used to so much attention. Don't apologize, Elena said. It's completely normal to feel overwhelmed. Your whole world just changed in the space of a few hours. Sarah nodded. I keep thinking this must be a dream. This morning I was worried about paying rent. Now people are talking about record deals and newspaper interviews. It doesn't feel real. It's real, Elena assured her. And it's all because of your incredible talent. But Sarah, I want to give you some advice. Okay. Don't make any big decisions tonight. All these people who gave you business cards, they're excited and that's good. But you don't have to commit to anything right away. Take time to think about what you really want. Sarah looked at Elena gratefully. What do you think I should do? Well, first I think you should go home to your brother. Tell him what happened. Get some sleep. Then tomorrow, when your head is clearer, you can start thinking about your options. What about your foundation? Were you serious about helping me? Elena smiled. Very serious. But I don't need an answer tonight. My offer will still be good tomorrow and next week and next month. I want you to be sure it's what you want before you commit to anything. Sarah felt some of the pressure in her chest ease up. Thank you. Everyone else seems to want an answer right now. That's because they're thinking about business, Elena explained. I'm thinking about you as a person. You've been through a lot, Sarah. You've made incredible sacrifices for your family. You deserve to make choices about your future carefully, not under pressure. Sarah stood up from the bench. I think I should go home now. I need to see Miguel and tell him what happened. I think that's a good idea, Elena agreed. But before you go, let me give you my contact information. Elena pulled out a simple white business card and wrote her personal phone number on the back. Call me tomorrow afternoon, Elena said. We'll have coffee and talk about everything properly. No pressure, no crowds, just the two of us. Sarah took the card and put it carefully in her pocket. Thank you, Elena, for everything. Thank you, Sarah. You reminded me tonight why I fell in love with music in the first place. Sarah walked back toward the house to get her purse and coat. The party was still going on, but many people had left. The remaining guests were talking quietly in small groups. When people saw Sarah come back inside, several of them tried to approach her again, but Elena appeared at Sarah's side and gently helped her get to the front door. "Remember," Elena whispered, "no decisions tonight. Just go home and rest." Sarah nodded and walked outside to where the valet was waiting with her old car. As she drove down the hill away from Marcus Chen's mansion, Sarah looked in her rearview mirror at the big house with all its lights. A few hours ago, she had entered that house as Sarah Martinez, the struggling waitress. Now she was leaving as Sarah Martinez, the pianist who might just have a future in music again. But first she had to go home and tell Miguel everything that had happened. She had to figure out how to explain that their lives might be about to change completely. As Sarah drove through the quiet streets toward home, she began to smile. For the first time in 3 years, she felt hope growing in her heart like a small, bright flame. Sarah arrived home at midnight to find Miguel waiting up for her in their small apartment. He was sitting on their old couch, reading a textbook for his community college classes. When he saw Sarah come through the door, he smiled. "How was the fancy party?" Miguel asked. "Did you meet any movie stars?" Sarah sat down next to her brother and looked at him carefully. Miguel was 19 now, tall and thin with the same dark hair and brown eyes as Sarah. The treatments had made him lose weight, but he looked healthy and strong. The medicine was working. "Miguel," Sarah said quietly, "something incredible happened tonight. Something that might change everything for us." Miguel closed his textbook and turned to face his sister. "What do you mean?" Sarah told him the whole story. She started with Marcus Chen's anger about the wine stain and how he had forced her to play piano. She told Miguel about the first song she played and how the crowd's attitude changed. Then she told him about meeting Elena Vasquez and the foundation that might help them. Miguel listened to everything without saying a word. His eyes got wider and wider as Sarah talked. "So this famous pianist wants to help us?" Miguel asked when Sarah finished. "She wants to pay for my treatments and send you back to music school?" "That's what she said. But Miguel, I haven't made any decisions yet. I wanted to talk to you first." Miguel was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then he looked at his sister with tears in his eyes. "Sarah, you gave up everything for me. You sold your piano. You left school. You've been working 2 jobs for 3 years just to keep me alive." "I did it because I love you," Sarah said simply. "I know. And that's exactly why you have to take this opportunity." Sarah shook her head. "I can't. What if something goes wrong? What if the foundation changes their mind? What if your treatments stop working? I can't risk your health for my dreams." "Sarah, listen to me." Miguel took his sister's hands. "I've been feeling guilty for 3 years. Guilty that you had to give up music because of me. Guilty that you worked so hard just to pay for my medicine. This is our chance to fix that. You don't have anything to feel guilty about. You didn't choose to get sick." "No, but I chose to let you sacrifice your dreams. I should have stopped you. I should have found another way." Sarah squeezed Miguel's hands. "There was no other way. The treatments were too expensive." "Maybe not then, but now there is. This Elena woman is offering us exactly what we need. You can have your music back, and I can stop being a burden." "You're not a burden." "Yes, I am. And I hate it." Miguel's voice was getting stronger and more determined. "Sarah, you're 24 years old. You should be performing in concert halls, not serving drinks to rich people who don't appreciate you." Sarah felt tears starting to fall. "But what if I'm not good enough anymore? What if 3 years away from music is too long? What if I try and fail?" Miguel smiled. "From what you told me about tonight, you haven't lost anything. If anything, you sound like you're better than you were before." "But it's scary, Miguel. What if it works out perfectly?" Miguel interrupted. "What if you become the famous pianist you always dreamed of being? What if you get to play your music for thousands of people?" Sarah had been so focused on everything that could go wrong that she had not thought much about everything that could go right. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared too," Miguel said. "But I'm more scared of you giving up this chance and regretting it for the rest of your life." Sarah hugged her brother tightly. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from my big sister," Miguel said with a laugh. They sat together on the couch, talking about the future for the first time in years. Miguel told Sarah about his own dreams. He wanted to finish college and become a teacher. He wanted to help other kids who were going through difficult times like he had. "If you become famous," Miguel joked, "maybe you can pay for my college, too." "If I become famous," Sarah said, "I'll buy you your own school." The next day, Sarah called in sick to work at Romano's restaurant. She had never called in sick before, even when she really was sick. But today she needed time to think. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Sarah drove to a small cafe in Santa Monica, where she had agreed to meet Elena Vasquez. Elena was already there when Sarah arrived, sitting at a quiet table in the corner. "How are you feeling today?" Elena asked as Sarah sat down. "Confused," Sarah answered honestly, "and excited and terrified." Elena laughed. "That sounds about right. Big changes are always confusing and exciting and terrifying." They ordered coffee, and Elena began to explain more about her foundation. "The Vasquez Foundation has been helping young musicians for 15 years, Elena said. "We've helped over 200 students complete their musical education. Many of them are now playing with major orchestras or having successful solo careers." "How does it work exactly?" Sarah asked. "We provide full scholarships to the music, school of the student's choice. We pay for tuition, books, living expenses, everything. In return, the student agrees to perform at least 12 concerts a year for charitable organizations." "That doesn't sound like much to ask." "It's not meant to be a burden. We want our students to succeed. The charitable concerts are just a way for them to give back to the community while they're learning." Elena pulled out a folder from her purse and showed Sarah some photos. They were pictures of young people performing in concert halls, playing with orchestras and receiving awards. "These are some of our former students," Elena explained. "This young man plays violin with the New York Philharmonic now. This woman just won a major piano competition in Europe. They all started where you are now, talented but facing difficult circumstances." Sarah looked at the photos and tried to imagine herself in one of them, wearing a beautiful dress and playing piano on a big stage. "What about my brother's medical expenses?" Sarah asked. "We have a special emergency fund for family medical needs," Elena said. "Your brother's treatments would be completely covered. You would never have to worry about money for his medicine." Again. Sarah felt her heart racing. This was almost too good to be true. "Why are you willing to do so much for me?" Sarah asked. "You barely know me." Elena was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the ocean. 25 years ago, Elena said finally, "I was in a situation a lot like yours. I was a young pianist from a poor family in Mexico. I had talent but no money for proper training. An older musician helped me get a scholarship to study in Europe. That help changed my whole life." Elena turned back to Sarah. "I've been successful, beyond my wildest dreams. I've played in the most famous concert halls in the world. I've made more money than I ever thought possible. But the most important thing I do now is help other young musicians the way I was helped." "So you're paying it forward." "Exactly. And Sarah, I want to be completely honest with you. You have more raw talent than anyone I've worked with in years. You could be one of the great pianists of your generation, but only if you're willing to work for it." Sarah took a deep breath. "If I said yes, what would happen next?" "First, you would audition for several music schools. With your talent, you could probably get into any school you wanted. Then you would start classes in September. Your brother's medical care would begin immediately." "What if I'm not ready? What if I can't handle the pressure of school after being away for 3 years?" Elena reached across the table and took Sarah's hand. "Sarah, last night you played perfectly after not touching a piano for 3 years. You played under the worst possible circumstances, tired, embarrassed, angry, and you were flawless. If you can do that, you can handle anything music school throws at you." Sarah closed her eyes and thought about Miguel. She thought about her parents, who had always believed in her music. She thought about the 3 years she had spent serving, drinks and cleaning tables, always dreaming of playing piano again. "Okay," Sarah said quietly. "Okay, what?" Sarah opened her eyes and looked at Elena with determination. "Okay, I want to try. I want to audition for music school. I want my music back." Elena smiled the biggest, happiest smile Sarah had ever seen. "Sarah, you just made the best decision of your life." As they left the cafe together, Sarah felt like she was walking on air. For the first time in 3 years, she was moving toward her dreams instead of away from them. The scared, struggling waitress was beginning to disappear. In her place, a confident, determined musician was being reborn. 3 months later, Sarah stood backstage at Carnegie Hall in New York City, wearing a beautiful black evening gown. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear this time. They were shaking from excitement. Tonight was her debut solo concert. The most famous concert hall in America was sold out, with over 2,000 people waiting to hear her play. Sarah could hardly believe it was real. The past 3 months had been like a whirlwind. After meeting with Elena, everything had moved very quickly. Sarah auditioned for 3 different music schools and was accepted to all of them with full scholarships. She chose to return to Juilliard, where she had studied before. Miguel's medical treatments had been transferred to a better hospital, where the doctors said his progress was excellent. The new medicine was working even better than the old treatments, and the doctors were hopeful that Miguel would be completely healthy within a year. Sarah had quit her job at Romano's restaurant. Mr. Romano was not happy about losing his best waitress, but he understood when Sarah explained what had happened. He even came to her concert tonight, sitting in the audience with tears of pride in his eyes. The preparation for tonight's concert had been intense. Elena had worked with Sarah every day, helping her choose the perfect pieces to perform. They selected a mix of classical favorites and 2 of Sarah's original compositions, including the piece she had played at Marcus Chen's party. Sarah had also worked with vocal coaches to help her speak to audiences and with stylists to help her look professional on stage. But the most important preparation had been the hours and hours of practice. Sarah played piano for 6 hours every day. Her fingers, which had been soft from 3 years of waitressing, became strong and flexible again. The music that had been sleeping in her heart for so long came flooding back, stronger and more beautiful than ever. Word about Sarah's talent had spread quickly through the music world. The video that David Kim had recorded on his phone at Marcus Chen's party had been shared thousands of times on social media. Music critics and classical music fans around the world were talking about the mysterious waitress who could play like an angel. Tonight's concert had sold out in less than 2 hours when tickets went on sale. People were calling Sarah the discovery of the decade and the most exciting new talent in classical music. But as Sarah stood backstage, adjusting her dress and trying to calm her nerves, she was not thinking about fame or critics or social media. She was thinking about Miguel, who was sitting in the front row of the audience, healthy and proud and beaming with joy. She was thinking about her parents, who she knew would be proud of her tonight. She was thinking about all the people who had helped her get to this moment. Elena, who had believed in her when no one else would, and even Marcus Chen, who had unknowingly given her the push she needed to find her music again. 5 minutes, Miss Martinez," a stagehand called out. Sarah took a deep breath and walked to the edge of the stage. Through a crack in the curtain, she could see the huge audience waiting for her. The concert hall was beautiful, with red velvet seats and golden decorations. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, sparkling like stars. In the front row, Sarah could see Miguel sitting next to Elena. Miguel was wearing his best suit and had a huge smile on his face. Next to him sat Elena, looking elegant and proud like a mother watching her daughter graduate. In the third row, Sarah spotted Marcus Chen. After the party 3 months ago, Marcus had become one of Sarah's biggest supporters. He had used his business connections to help promote her concert, and he had even established a scholarship fund for young musicians facing financial hardships. Seeing Sarah's talent had changed him into a better person. Also in the audience was David Kim from the record company, who had already offered Sarah a recording contract. Jennifer Walsh, the music critic, was there with her notebook, ready to review the concert. And scattered throughout the audience were dozens of other musicians, music teachers, and music lovers who had heard about Sarah's story and wanted to witness her official debut. But as Sarah looked out at all these important people, she realized that the only person who really mattered was Miguel. Everything she had done for him. And now, because of his encouragement, she was about to achieve her biggest dream. "Ladies and gentlemen," came the announcement over the speaker system, "please welcome pianist Sarah Martinez." Sarah walked out onto the stage as the audience erupted in applause. The sound was overwhelming. 2,000 people clapping and cheering for her. Sarah walked to the beautiful black grand piano at the center of the stage and sat down at the bench. As the applause died down, the concert hall became perfectly quiet. Sarah looked out at the audience one more time, making eye contact with Miguel, who gave her an encouraging nod. Then Sarah turned to the piano and began to play. Her first piece was Chopin's Ballade No. 1, one of the most difficult and beautiful pieces in classical music. Sarah had played this piece many times as a student, but tonight it sounded different. Tonight it sounded like the music was coming from her soul. As Sarah played, she forgot about everything else. She forgot about the audience, the critics, the pressure. There was only the music, flowing from her heart through her fingers and into the world. The audience was completely captivated. Many people had come tonight expecting to hear a talented young pianist. Instead, they were hearing something much more rare, a true artist who could make people feel deep emotions through music. When Sarah finished the Chopin piece, the applause was thunderous. But Sarah was just getting started. She played Rachmaninoff, Debussy, and Liszt with perfect technique and deep feeling. Each piece was better than the last. For her final piece, Sarah played her own composition, Memories of Home. This was the same piece she had played at Marcus Chen's party, but tonight it sounded even more powerful. As Sarah played about her parents, her struggles, and her love for Miguel, there was not a dry eye in the concert hall. When the final notes faded away, the audience leaped to their feet in a standing ovation that lasted for 10 minutes. People were crying, cheering, and calling for more music. Sarah stood up from the piano bench and bowed, tears of joy streaming down her face. As the curtain came down, Sarah ran off stage and straight into the arms of Miguel and Elena, who had come backstage to congratulate her. "I can't believe I did it," Sarah said, hugging them both tightly. "I can," Miguel said with tears of pride in his eyes. "You were incredible, Sarah. Mom and Dad would be so proud." "They would be proud of both of us," Sarah replied. "We made it, Miguel. We both made it." The reviews of Sarah's concert were incredible. Jennifer Walsh wrote in the Los Angeles Times that Sarah was a once-in-a-generation talent with the ability to move audiences to tears. Music magazines around the world featured Sarah on their covers, calling her the most exciting new voice in classical music. But the best review came from Miguel, who told his sister simply, "You sounded like happiness." 6 months after her Carnegie Hall debut, Sarah signed a recording contract and began touring around the world. Her first album, which included Memories of Home and several other original compositions, became the best-selling classical album of the year. Miguel finished his treatment successfully and enrolled in college to study education. He wanted to become a music teacher and help other young people discover the joy of music, just like his sister had. Elena continued to mentor Sarah and remained one of her closest friends. The Vasquez Foundation, inspired by Sarah's success, expanded their program to help even more young musicians facing difficult circumstances. And Marcus Chen? He completely changed his attitude toward people. He started treating his employees with respect and kindness, and he never forgot the lesson that Sarah had taught him, that you should never judge people by their job or their appearance. You never know what hidden talents and beautiful hearts they might have. Sarah kept the promise she had made to herself that first night at the piano. She never forgot where she came from or why she had started playing music in the first place. Every concert she performed, every recording she made, every award she won, she dedicated to the memory of her parents and to Miguel, who had given her the courage to chase her dreams. And sometimes, late at night when she was alone with her piano, Sarah would play Memories of Home and remember the scared young waitress who had been forced to play piano at a rich man's party. That moment of humiliation had become the first step on a journey that led her back to herself, back to her music, and back to the life she was meant to live. Sarah had learned that sometimes the worst moments in our lives can become doorways to the best moments. Sometimes we have to be broken down completely before we can be built back up into who we're truly meant to be. And most importantly, she had learned that family, love, and music are the things that truly matter in life. Everything else is just noise. Sarah Martinez, the waitress who was forced to play piano at a party, had become Sarah Martinez, one of the most celebrated pianists of her generation. But more than that, she had become a woman who knew that her greatest success was not the applause of thousands, but the proud smile of her brother Miguel, sitting in the front row, healthy and happy and free. The music had brought her home,